We are counting down the 10 booby traps that haunted every step of American troops in Vietnam. From animal-based terrors in pitch-black tunnels to hidden devices engineered to maim, these traps turned the jungle into a living nightmare. Some preyed on primal fear, others shattered trust in even the fallen. Which deadly creation topped them all? Let's begin with number 10. Deep inside the labyrinth of Viet Cong tunnels, American tunnel rats faced a terror that defied training and courage. Live venomous snakes rigged as living traps. Bamboo tubes or woven baskets were hidden in the low, cramped ceilings. A single touch or a tripwire snapped open a lid, dropping a coiled snake onto an intruder's face or chest with no warning. In total darkness, with barely enough room to crawl, soldiers had no chance to dodge or defend themselves. The primal fear of a sudden strike in that suffocating blackness haunted even the toughest men. Some tunnel rats, after one encounter, refused to ever go underground again. Tripwired grenades and spike devices turned every tunnel crawl into a deadly puzzle. Grenades were often wired just beyond bends or mounted behind heavy doors, set to detonate in the narrowest passages where a blast could not escape. Even a small explosion in these clay-walled corridors created overpressure, magnifying the force and shrapnel. Some tunnels hid hinged spiked doors or drop-down boards, triggered by the slightest touch, slamming into a crawling soldier with nowhere to dodge. The Viet Cong sometimes chained multiple traps in sequence. One trigger set off a series of blasts or falling boards. In these confined spaces, a single misstep could mean disaster for anyone underground. On the surface, the aftermath of a firefight often brought its own hidden danger. Enemy bodies left on trails or in bunkers could be rigged with grenades, the pin already pulled. The corpse's weight the only thing holding the safety lever in place. Lifting or rolling a body for identification or intelligence could release the spoon, triggering a deadly explosion just seconds later. This turned a routine act, checking the fallen, into a moment of terror and suspicion. Engineers were sometimes called in just to clear the dead, because the risk of a booby-trapped body was too great. The enemy had weaponized the very rituals of war, forcing soldiers to question every step, every touch, and even the meaning of victory itself. A single strand of wire, nearly invisible in the thick undergrowth, stretched ankle-high across a jungle trail. On one end, a captured United States M26 grenade dangled from a root or tree, its safety lever held in place by the same wire. One careless step yanked the pin free, releasing the lever and arming the grenade. 4 seconds later, shrapnel exploded outward at close range. Sometimes, several grenades were rigged to a single wire, widening the kill zone and amplifying the carnage. The horror ran deeper than the mechanics. United States soldiers recognized their own grenades, familiar shapes now turned against them. Patrols advanced with eyes glued to the ground, every footfall a potential trigger for their own lost munitions. These traps accounted for a significant share of casualties, and their betrayal stung long after the explosions faded. In the suffocating green, even the tools meant to protect became instruments of fear. A single rifle or pistol cartridge, buried just beneath the dirt, could change the course of a patrol. The Viet Cong built these traps using a simple bamboo tube and a nail for a firing pin. When a soldier's boot pressed down, the cartridge fired straight up into the foot or ankle. The explosion seldom killed, but it often destroyed toes or shattered bones, forcing a medical evacuation. Each wounded man meant 2 or 3 others pulled off the mission to carry him out, plus a helicopter and a hospital bed. Cheap and easy to hide, these traps could be scattered by the hundreds along jungle trails. The logic was brutal. A maimed soldier drained far more resources than a dead one. Reports from the field described men losing feet or facing amputation from a single step. The fear of these tiny, invisible killers haunted every march, making even solid ground feel treacherous. A narrow pit, barely wider than a man's shoulders, hid its true danger beneath the surface. At the center, a fragile stick held apart two heavy wooden boards, each lined with sharpened bamboo spikes pointing inward. When a soldier's weight snapped the support, the board slammed shut from both sides, impaling legs, hips, or torso in a crushing grip. Unlike simple stake pits, this trap locked its victim in place, making any movement drive the spikes deeper. Rescue was slow and perilous. Comrades had to pry the boards apart while exposed to enemy fire or secondary traps. Eyewitness accounts from Cu Chi describe the agony and panic as medics worked to free trapped men, often while blood loss mounted. The clamshell pit's design delivered a double blow: catastrophic wounds and total immobilization, amplifying both the physical and psychological cost for any unit unlucky enough to trigger one. A single green bamboo pole, anchored low and bent under fierce tension, waited beside countless jungle trails. Its free end bristled with sharpened spikes or a metal plate, all hidden by undergrowth. The only warning was a thin tripwire stretched across the path at leg or groin height. When a soldier's boot or knee brushed the wire, the catch snapped free. In a split second, the bamboo whip lashed sideways, spikes slashing across shins, thighs, or the groin with a force impossible to dodge. U.S. Marine Corps reports describe these traps as disabling the lead man instantly, sometimes hitting 2 or 3 men in a patrol column. Cheap to build, easy to reset, and nearly invisible, the bamboo whip trap could be used again and again. The sudden violent impact and deep wounds left men bleeding and immobilized, while the rest of the patrol scrambled for cover, never knowing if another whip waited just ahead. A heavy wooden board, studded with long, sharpened spikes, waited above countless jungle paths and narrow approaches. It was secured by a simple latch or a tripwire, often hidden by leaves or brush. One step onto the trigger, and gravity did the rest. The board dropped like a guillotine, crashing down with all its weight onto the unsuspecting soldier below. The force drove spikes deep into the torso, pinning the victim to the ground or even into a shallow pit. Extraction was a nightmare. The board's weight and the angle of the spikes made any movement agony, and the trap remained dangerous to rescuers. Any attempt to lift or shift the board risked further injury or triggering another device. At Cu Chi, demonstrations show how thoroughly these traps could immobilize a man, sometimes driving spikes clean through the body. The sight alone froze patrols in their tracks. Unlike the bamboo whip's quick slash, the tiger trap crushed and trapped, leaving soldiers helpless, bleeding, and exposed to enemy fire. Its brutal simplicity and the horror of being pinned alive made it one of the most dreaded traps in the Viet Cong arsenal. A heavy log or ball studded with nails or sharpened metal hung silently above the jungle path. Tied to a rope and hidden in the canopy, it waited for a single misstep. A tripwire stretched across the trail, almost invisible in the shadows, and that was all it took. The wire snapped, the catch released, and gravity sent the mace swinging forward in a deadly arc. The impact was brutal. Veterans recall the sound of the spiked mass crashing through leaves, then the sickening thud as it slammed into a soldier's chest or skull. The force could shatter ribs, crush a helmet, or kill instantly. In some cases, the mace struck more than one man, its momentum carrying through the patrol column. The materials were simple: wood, rope, scrap metal. but the effect was catastrophic. Survivors of these attacks often suffered broken bones, brain injuries, or permanent disability. The threat of a mace swinging out of nowhere kept men's eyes darting skyward, even as they scanned the ground for pits. Cheap to build and easy to reset, this trap turned the jungle itself into a weapon, delivering instant, devastating violence with every pass. A shallow depression in the earth, barely wider than a boot, concealed a threat that haunted every American patrol. The Punji stake pit lay beneath a thin mat of leaves and twigs, sharpened bamboo stakes waiting, their tips smeared with human waste or rotting plant matter. The stakes were angled backward, designed so that a leg or foot driven down would be torn apart on extraction, making rescue as agonizing as the initial wound. These pits appeared everywhere, along trails, at river crossings, underwater, even on the approaches to landing zones. Some were deep enough to swallow a man whole, others just enough to cripple a foot. The contamination was no accident. Medical teams saw wound after wound turn septic, with infections so severe that amputation was often the only option. Reports estimated that Punji sticks alone caused 2% of all US wounds in Vietnam, but their true impact went far beyond numbers. Every patch of ground became suspect. The knowledge that a single step could bring not just pain, but slow, festering infection, drained morale and forced soldiers to walk with eyes glued to the earth, every nerve on edge. Cheap, easy to make, and endlessly redeployed, Punji pits turned the jungle floor itself into a weapon, one that wounded the body and wore down the mind, day after day. Across all 10 traps, one truth emerges. Fear was the Viet Cong's deadliest weapon. These low-tech devices did not just wound bodies, they shattered confidence and slowed entire armies. In asymmetric warfare, psychological impact can outweigh firepower. That lesson still shapes military strategy today.